Those are people that I look up to. And oh, you just wanted it to be recorded, huh? But I want to introduce Howard E. And if you could come in, introduce yourself, buddy. This is going to be a really fun meeting today. Rock and roll. Let's go, Howard.
Yeah, sure. My name is Howard Eber, and I am an addict and alcoholic. It's an honor to be here. I've actually, this is the first time I've ever really done a workshop with anybody else. It's probably good practice because in a few weeks I'll be doing it with Steve Wood. But it's great to start with you, Terry. There are very few people in recovery that can do what you do, and that is speak extemporaneously and get attention riveting, absolutely riveting attention from people you speak to. That you've got that gift. And in my years around the rooms, there haven't been that many people that I could point to that I feel that way about. Chris, my sponsor, Chris Schroeder, is one. Mark Houston's another. There are certain guys that are just in the pantheon, and you're on the way. You're on the way. So it's an honor to be here with you, Terry.
Thanks, buddy. I'm speechless now.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to talk?
Did I leave anything out? Is that was the
Yeah.
way we rehearsed?
Oh man, that was above and beyond. Thank you. Um, I'm at a loss of words, but thank you, Howard. We're on page 32 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We were just talking about all sorts of tests in this book. I was telling Howard earlier that I did a Big Book workshop with this guy named Roy Kay. He's got 33 years. This guy was like a walking encyclopedia, just like Howard. And all the stuff he learned was from Howard. So we're just going to be kind of echoing each other all day and just kind of dissecting this book. So I guess I'll read a paragraph. And actually, you want to flip a coin to see who'll go first? We read a paragraph and then talk on it.
It's your ball, so you start. Go right ahead.
All right, I'll just rock and roll. All right. So we're on page 32, bottom of the page. This is one of our tests. And it says, we do not like to pronounce any individual as an alcoholic, but you could quickly diagnose yourself. So at this point of the book is doesn't say don't drink, go to meetings in this book. This book actually tells us to go drink if we're questioning it. Now, if you're going taking someone through this path or through this journey, hopefully you've done a pretty good job beating them up in step one or the pages right before this to where they don't need to go out and try some controlled drinking, right? To see if they are one of us, right? And I've had one or two people that have done this and have come back because some people need to find out that, hey, I don't know if I really do have this allergy. So or this craving when I drink, I get thirsty, I want more. And it said, here's the instructions. Step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. Try to drink and stop abruptly. Try it more than once. Why more than once? I was talking to someone who I've been working with a few people that have been had 2 years of them and had a relapse and they're struggling to get back in. And he was telling me, I asked, good sponsorship. We're gonna get to next page actually, for Jim's story, where it says that each time Jim relapsed half a dozen times, they work with him, seeing what had happened, right? And that's good sponsorship. Like I don't shoot the wounded or beat them up because they drank or got high again. I want to see what happened. And what happened was with this individual, he stopped doing the work. It's pretty simple. He just stopped doing it. But here's something that happened to him is that when he did take that substance, he was like, he took it and it said, I'm okay. Nothing, the big bad wolf didn't come out. That's scary to me. Listening to that, that's scary. My mind will take that story and go down a rabbit hole with that because I will believe it until I probably am on my knees begging God for help somewhere. Right. So hopefully, what's up, buddy? You want another one? Yeah, sorry. hopefully that kind of gives you an idea that do I need to, oh, I just lost my page. 32. Skip the page.
We're at the bottom of 31.
31, sorry. Try it more than once, yeah. It will not take you long to decide if you are honest with yourself about it. Now, it took him about a month and a half to get honest about it. I never tried this experiment because I'm just one of those guys that rode the pony to the bitter end. I got my butt thoroughly whooped. I'm a low bottom drunk. I'm a low bottom cokehead. I'm a low bottom opiate addict. I didn't need to question if I am, but this book will start to appeal to someone who is a high bottom drunk, someone who hasn't hit the bottom of the barrel, which is very good because this information is what we try to do here is we plant seeds. And I have a friend, his name, we call him, his name's Tony, but he likes to call himself Tony Appleseed. He likes to plant seeds wherever he goes, just by explaining the knowledge of what's really wrong with you. And if you have a knowledge and an experience of what's really wrong with you, it won't take you long to be honest with yourself, like, damn, I got this physical and medical condition that separates me from other drinkers, right? So it may be worth bad, may be worth a bad case of the jitters if you get there's that word, that knowledge, a full knowledge of your condition. Sometimes when people go on a relapse, and I've worked with a lot of people with this as well. Sometimes they need to get their butt thoroughly whooped in order to be awakened. I know people have had spiritual experiences where they realize, damn, I am an alcoholic. I'll give you an experience. I told someone they questioned if they're a real alcoholic, right? And when we were reading, go try some controlled drinking, and the dude literally did it. And I think I told the story, I think once before here, but I don't know if anyone's heard it. Put on your earmuffs, right? This guy literally went to a bar and he took a drink, and he's like, "That son of a b Terry doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't have this allergy." Then he took another. 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 I forgot what numbers he stopped at, but he's lifting up this other drink. I don't know, 10 or XYZ. Later, he's like, "That son of a b Terry was right. I have this craving that's beyond my mental control. I get thirstier when I drink." Right? Sometimes it is worth for us to have a bad case of the jitters to get a full knowledge of our condition. Then it will give us motivation to do the work. All right, Howard, over to you, buddy.
Yeah, well, let me just back up a little bit if I might. Terry mentioned the tests. On top of page 31 is the where we started the tests. The tests actually, there are 5 tests. Let me get to that page. On top of 31, paragraph 1, the paragraph that begins with, "Despite all we can say." About 3 lines up from the bottom of that paragraph is test number 1. It says, "Drink like a gentleman." That's test number 1. Down at the bottom of the page, it says, second to last line, "Step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking." Test number 2. "Try to drink and stop abruptly." Test number 3. And because we're alcoholics and the outcome is going to change every time we do it, we're going to try the next test, which is test number 4, which is try it more than once. Because if we're good alcoholics, we're expecting a different result each time we do it. Those are the 4. And then the 5th, if you turn to page 34, and we'll get there in a moment, on the top of the page, the first paragraph says, "As we look back." In the middle of the paragraph, it says, "Let them try leaving liquor alone for 1 year." There's test number 5. Try leaving liquor alone for a year. And there actually is a 6th test that's not in the book. Marty Mann put it in her book. And she said the following. She said, "Select any time for starting this. Now's the best time. For the next 6 months, decide that you'll stick to a certain number of drinks a day. You pick that number. It cannot be less than 1 or more than 3. Whatever number you choose, it under any circumstances, weddings, births, funerals, etc., you cannot take more than that per day. There must be no special occasions on which you feel justified in adding to your quota. So see how long you could manage doing that. 2 or 3 drinks you choose. You even choose the size. Can't be a bucket size, but you choose it. 2 a day, and that's it. And you can't back up, meaning pass 4 or 5 days and then take 10 of them the next day. That we've tried all of that stuff. It's 2 or 3 a day, whatever number you pick, and that's it. So any one of these, we're going to fail every one of these tests if we're real alcoholics. And one of the things to be noted about this chapter is we're going to try and identify through examples where people crossed over the line from recognizing the truth to making a decision based on a lie. And what was that lie? Because the second step says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Sanity is defined as the ability to recognize the truth in any given situation. So if sanity is recognizing the truth, insanity is belief in a lie. So when did we cross over? And I'll put this up and then I'll get out of the way. This is a kind of an overview of this chapter. And if anyone wants any of the things I put up here, you're more than welcome to drop me a line at thebigbookstudy@aol.com and ask for this material. But the first example we had was a man of 30. The man of 30 fell prey to the lie that after a long period of sobriety and self-discipline, he could drink again like other men. The end result, out came his carpet slippers and a bottle after 25 years of abstinence, and he drank himself to death within 4 years. The lie he believed in was that after a long period of abstinence, he could drink like other men. That idea has to be smashed. We were already told that earlier on in the book. The notion that the delusion that we can drink like other men has to be smashed. And then we have Jim the car salesman, and we're approaching that. And we're about to see what lie he believed in, but I'm not going to show you that yet because we'll talk about that when we get there. But the point is, every one of these stories has a point at which the person we're talking about made a decision based on a lie. They went from believing the truth, knowing what happens every time they pick up that drink, to making a decision based on a lie. Now, the first story, the man of 30 made a conscious decision to start drinking again. He knew he couldn't drink with any degree of control, so he was an exceptional man. He stayed dry for 25 years. That is exceptional. And then when he made the money and he retired, out came the slippers and he drank himself to death in 4 to 5 years. So that's story number 1. But remember, he made a decision to go back to drinking. We're about to see what happens in the situation where someone decides to do the opposite. What sort of thinking dominates that person who time after time repeats the desperate experiment of the first drink? We're about to get to that story, and I'll give it back to you, Terry.
Thanks, buddy. So there is no way of proving it. We believe that early in our drinking careers, I like that word career, most of us could have stopped drinking. But the difficulty is that few alcoholics or addicts have enough desire to stop while there is yet time. We have heard of a few instances where people who show definite signs of alcoholism are able to stop for a long period of time because of an overpowering desire to do so. And I'll read this next paragraph. A man at 30 was doing a great deal of spree drinking. He was very nervous in the morning after these bouts and quieted himself with more liquor. He was ambitious to succeed in business, but saw that he would get nowhere if he drank at all. Once he started, he had no control whatever. I said this earlier. Whenever we see the word control, power, or choice, you stop there, you put the word power above it and the word choice below it. If you lost one, you lost all three. right? And I asked you guys to find definitions of those as well. The definition of control means the ability to limit something, right? So he made up his mind that until he'd been successful in business and had retired, he would not touch another drop. An exceptional man, he remained bone dry for 25 years and retired at the age of 55 after a successful and happy business career. So here's the insane idea coming in to play right here. And Howard was just talking about that, like buying a lie. And this is going to show us the how we're mentally powerless over alcohol and drugs. How we're going to have an insane thought coming into it. And just like what my boy Howard was saying, we're going to make a decision slash take action on that insane thought. All the characters that we're going to read about have this trait. That's what we're going to talk about. What I do want to let the group know is in between that insane idea and that decision slash action to go drink or get high is a very small space, but occupies a very, very large God. And what we're doing is we're going to build a relationship with that power, which will separate us from taking action or making that decision to go get high or drunk, right? This is what we call at the end of this chapter, our defense must come from a higher power. That's what they're setting us up for. They're going to show us examples of why we need a higher power because we're truly powerless in our mental state of being or our mental condition. So here's the insane idea. Then he fell victim. Victim meant to be tricked or duped. He was tricked or duped by the thought process in his head that the belief, which practically every alcoholic or addict has, that his long period of sobriety and self-discipline had qualified him to drink as other men. When he got his butt thoroughly whooped by alcohol, when he drank, he lost control. He had nervous disposition, just like I did, just Jim has it too, right? Needed to quiet that with some more liquor, right? And what happened? Here's the decision. That's the decision. Here's the action. Out came his carpet slippers in the bottle. In 2 months, he was in the hospital, puzzled and humiliated. He tried to regulate, another words for control, tried to control his drinking for a while, try to moderate, making several trips to the hospital in the meantime. I mean, who's done that to control their drinking, lock themselves up just to stop them from drinking for a period of time? That doesn't sound like freedom to me. Then, gathering all his forces, he attempted to stop altogether. Here's the obsession, and found he could not. Yet again, another trend or another theme that we're going to looking at is, am I convinced that I'm in a progressive illness that I get worse? Never better, right? And any period of considerable time, I get worse, never better, meaning the disease progresses in your sober state of being as well. He picked up, and he was puzzled and humiliated, right? Every means of solving his problem, lack of power, which money could buy, was at his disposal. Every attempt failed. Though a robust man at retirement, he went into pieces quickly and was dead in 4 years. Um, now, I love this story, and I'll tell this story afterwards and hand it over to Howard. Is I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I knew I was an addict. Got that down. I knew it. When I was drinking, I lost control every time I drank, but my mind would always jump to another drug in order to feel better. And I was able to abstain from alcohol. I went to 4 rehabs because of alcohol when I was 14, 15, 17, and 18, right? Kind of like a little problem back then, right? My experience was I was a very allergy dominant alcoholic, but not so with the obsession. With drugs, it was both boom, boom, boom. But I wasn't at that progression or that spectrum that I'm talking about where I was lost everything. I was that, and I lost that, right? On page, what is it, 44, that it talks about with the allergy and obsession. I went to a detox with these big book guys, And there were drug addicts at this detox, and I told my drug addict story. And afterwards, I was sitting down, eating dinner with this dude, and he's a big book guy. And he leaned over. He said, "Terry, I'm concerned you're not a real alcoholic." That's what he told me. And I was like, "What the hell?" Now, granted, I was telling people I was on 9, 10, 11, and 12 when I was not on 9, 10, 11, and 12. I just stopped doing the work, just straight up, right? And I got angry. And there was a reason why I got angry, because I didn't have a 10 step in my life, or 11 step, or a 12 step. I was completely cut off. But this is what I said. Maybe he's right. And you know what I said over and over and over again in my head? This is what I said. "Terry, why don't you step over to the nearest bar and try some controlled drinking? Try it once. Try it, try to stop abruptly." You know how many times I said that, Howard? Up here in this little minion? I said it every 15 minutes for 3 weeks straight. Now tell me, does that sound like something that has progressed in recovery? I got a friend, Tony Z in the Bronx. He said he became was it a type 4 alcoholic in sobriety, right? Your progression will progress when in a sober state of being. My obsession, I have never experienced anything like that in my mind, ever, when it came to alcohol. It always happened when I drank. I always got thirstier. But the obsession was so powerful, I almost drank at 9 months of sobriety. And thank God it got me, that experience happened to me, because when I called up my sponsor, he said, "Hey," told him what's happening. He's like, "Are you making your amends?" I'm like, "No, I'm not making my amends." "How do you know that?" "How do you know I'm not doing it?" It catapulted me into doing something I really didn't want to do, like making amends. And I was rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence afterwards. Howard, back to you, bud.
Uh, yeah, that was great, Terry, and it's so true. You read in the middle of page 32, the last paragraph, he fell victim to a belief that practically every alcoholic has, that his long period of sobriety and self-discipline had qualified him to drink as other men. You may want to make note, those of you here today, next to that, you may want to write, see page 30, paragraph 1, last line, because what it says on page 30, last line, is the delusion that we are like other people, or presently maybe, has to be smashed. Has to be smashed. So we know that. And I'm sorry, when I was explaining it earlier, I thought you had covered this stuff last week, so I apologize for that. So I kind of let the cat out of the bag. But let me talk a little bit about this story. Each one of the stories in this book has a background. Two of the stories are based on real people. One is the jaywalker is an example that Bill took from what you call it, Shoemaker, who used to use that story to explain to people what alcoholism is like, to who didn't understand it. So to get an idea of what it's like, he told him this jaywalker story. But what about this? What about this story? It is said that this story came from, as did a lot of things in Bill Wilson's book, from this book, The Common Sense of Drinking by Richard. I know it says Peabody, but in Massachusetts they pronounce it Peabody. So however you want to pronounce it, Richard Peabody or Richard Peabody, that story came from this book. And I'll give you some ideas as to why that's so. I'm going to put this up. These are pages from this actual book. Here we are. It says, this man, after 36 years of living and approximately 16 of drinking, definitely disproved to his own conviction he cannot use alcohol without abusing it. So this man of 30 realized that if he continued to drink, he would get nowhere. So he was an exceptional man. He put aside that bottle. And here's the other part of it. Some years ago, there lived a man who decided to give up drinking until he could make $1 million, at which time he intended to drink in moderation. It took him 5 years of sobriety to make the million, not 25, the way our story was. It took 5 years. Then he began his, quote, moderate drinking, and in 2 or 3 years, he lost his money, and in another 3, he died of alcoholism. So in 4, 5, 6 years, he drank himself to death. Is it a coincidence that these stories are similar? I don't know. You make up your own mind. But I'll give you some other examples from Richard Peabody that you may find interesting. One of the things he wrote in the book was, once a drunkard, always a drunkard. You see, back when this book was written, they didn't use the word alcoholic. They used the word drunken. By the time the big book came out, the word alcoholic was in common use. So Bill said, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, which is exactly what Peabody said. Here's another one. Of course, a man who has had long periods of abstinence may on a few occasions be able to manage things well when he resumes drinking, but sooner or later he will crash harder than ever. How about this time it's going to be different? Does that sound familiar? It gets better. It gets better. How about this one? On page 85 of that book, halfway measures are of no avail. Does that sound familiar? You make up your mind where this stuff came from, but there are a lot of coincidences here. Here's another one. I think I got that last one. Oh, we got that one. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone for the moment. Get back to this. But this is just some historical information on this story, but the details of which Terry had covered beautifully. And again, the point is, this guy recognized the truth. The truth was that if he continued drinking, he would get nowhere. So he made a decision based on that fact and stopped drinking. And then, after 25 years, he resumed his drinking and was dead within a few years. So the question, did the truth kill him or did the lie kill him? Right? He made a decision to drink again that was based on the lie. And it was the truth that killed him because he couldn't drink like anybody else. But the truth killed him because he made a decision based on the lie. So you decide. Was it the truth that killed him or was it the lie that killed him? In either case, he made a decision based on a lie. And that point at which he crossed over was the point at which he took that first drink after 25 years of abstinence. Because as Terry mentioned, our disease is progressive. It runs alongside of us whether we are drinking or not. You see, I thought my disease was progressive only when I drank. Nope. When I'm not drinking, it's running alongside of me. And I could tell you from personal experience, after 10 years of sobriety, when I picked up again, my body reacted as if I'd been using every day of those 10 years that I wasn't. Plus, I was 10 years older, and my body couldn't handle the alcohol and the drugs the way it used to when I was 20 or 30 years old. These are things that contribute to the progression catching up with us. So he picked up and his body reacted as if it had been using all of that time and it killed him. And there's the lie. Thanks, Terry. You go back.
Yeah, that's scary stuff. Yeah. I mean, step one is designed to smash us. It really is. I mean, this is the foundation of my life. It's part of my cement. Uh, my foundation is in place, and you can't shake it, can't penetrate it, you can't move it. Regardless of all the, if I stop doing all the work and I burn my arch down to the ground, I'll still be standing on that base or that foundation and be like, two options: either drink or do the work again. It's just been my experience, and I rebuild, and I'm still sober today. So thank you for explaining that. I love that story about. I mean, Bill, he stressed the truth a lot, but to make a point, he's making a good point to us. Pay attention. You know, this is, we're dealing with a deadly disease. You know, I think I said this last week. The problem's within you, but so is the solution. So in order to gain this acquire hope, you got to feel hopeless, right? So, all right. This case contains a powerful lesson. Most of us believe that if we remain sober for a long stretch, we could therefore thereafter drink normally. But here's a man at 55 years found he was just where he left off at 30. We've seen the truth demonstrated again and again. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic.
Once a drunk,
Commence, yeah,
always a drunkard.
yeah. Well, commencing to drink after a period of sobriety, we are in short time as bad as ever, just like what Howard was explaining. Here's some statements that we could take and turn them into questions for ourselves. If we are planning to stop drinking, that's a statement. Are you planning to stop drinking? There must be no reservation of any kind. Are there any reservations of any kind, any lurking notion in the back of your head that you could drink successfully? That is something that you should pause and actually think about. I had a reservation. I just explained it to you guys. Let me tell you something about a reservation. I'm gonna be so angry, just like I was angry at that dude who called said I wasn't a real alcoholic. Man, if I even stubbed my toe on the door, I probably would have said drink solution, drink answer. Because there was a little reservation in the back of my head that said, you know what, maybe I'm not an alcoholic, right? The truth or the lie, right? Okay. Young peeps may be encouraged by this man's experience to think that they could stop as he did on their own willpower. There's that word power, put the word choice above it, word control below it. On their own will, thinking, power, choice, and control. We thought if many of them can do it, because none of them really want to stop. Hardly one of them, because of the peculiar mental twists already acquired. We will find he or I could win out. Some of our crowd, men of 30 or less, have been drinking only a few years, but they found themselves helpless at those who've been drinking 20 years. Now, I used to judge I was about to curse, but I'm not going to do it because Howard's here. I used to judge the heck out of people who said they got sober at the age 14, 15, and 16 and they got 30 or 40 years sober. And I'm like, Jesus, I drank longer than you were alive. You know? Now, that changed when I started working with others, but that really changed when I was in Minnesota and I'd be around people who were 18 or 19 years old, who were the real alcoholics, who were blowing like fives, point fives. And I couldn't even believe it until I actually saw it. I met people with 30 years that who were 50 years old who got sober in their early 20s, and these people had stories that were basically a mirror of mine. And I would have never guessed that they were real alcoholic. That judgment, this chapter is literally smashing, saying that alcoholism doesn't give a crap how old you are, doesn't give a crap how smart you are. If you're a genius, just like Bill, Bill was a genius, didn't care. Didn't that almost took him out? Even doesn't care if you're a man or a woman, which is the next paragraph that's coming up. This is showing us that alcoholism is a deadly illness. All right, back to you, buddy.
Yep, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, where was it? Yeah. Um, in the paragraph that Terry read, I think it's important. If you've worked with me before, you know that I'm a bug about words and that we need to understand the meaning of these terms. So, what exactly is a lurking notion? What exactly is a reservation? Well, a lurking notion is just a secret idea. Did you know that? That a lurking notion is a secret idea. Okay? It's not just an idea, it's a secret idea. You don't tell anybody about it. What is a reservation? I found a great definition for reservation. A reservation is defined as doubts or limiting conditions that hold one back due to doubt or suspicion. Things that hold us back due to doubt or suspicion. I know I can't drink safely. Yet I tell myself, if I have to go to that wedding, or if I have to do this, or if I have to go to that job interview, I could handle it this one time. Because deep down inside, I have this lurking notion, this secret idea that I can get away with it once. Despite what I say initially, I have this lurking notion that appears as a reservation, which is that on this one occasion, I'll be able to get away with it. And that's a lurking notion that shows up as a reservation, and the reservation is just doubts, limiting conditions that hold us back due to doubt or suspicion. I doubt. I'm suspicious of whether I can actually get away with it or not. So I take that drink and I lose that deal. I lose that battle. Uh, Terry mentioned the peculiar mental twist. That's the insanity of the first of the disease. And young people, I am in awe of you guys. I really am. I met a guy some years back. He came in when I met him. When he came in, he was 18 years old. He's now in his mid late 30s. He has never gone out. He is sponsoring a lot of people. He's helped a lot of people. But when I was 18, I was bulletproof. You couldn't tell me anything. And people did. My dad was telling me that when I was 15 or 16, what was going to happen. What do you know? Right? So you couldn't tell me anything. It's just if you have the wherewithal to see where this is going, and you can come in here and no further experimentation is necessary, God bless you, man, because you've got the world by the short hairs. You've got it all. What a life you can lead as a result of coming in at 18 versus 30 something or 40 something. Extraordinary. All right, Terry, you want to go on with the next paragraph? You want me to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, you could go.
Okay. Um, to be gravely affected. It's an interesting choice of words, don't you think? He didn't say seriously affected, he said gravely. When I hear the word gravely, I get a notion, a picture of a hole 6 feet deep. Gravely affected. One does not necessarily have to drink for a long time, nor take the quantity some of us have. It doesn't matter how much you drink. It doesn't matter what you drink. It doesn't matter what the consequences of your drinking are. As Terry mentioned earlier, it's about your relationship to alcohol in terms of, did we pick up the words that Terry used before? Power, choice, and control. We don't have any of those things. So it's not about what, it's not about how often, it's not about what happens. It's about our relationship to that chemical in terms of those three things. We have none of it. That's what makes us alcoholic. Now, when we drank, how often we drank, what we drank has nothing to do with it. This is particularly true of women. I'm not a big fan of this paragraph, incidentally. I disagree with this reasoning. Not It's particularly true of women. Potential alcoholics often turn into the real thing and are gone beyond recall in a few years. Certain drinkers who'd be greatly insulted if called alcoholics are astonished at their inability to stop, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. That one is true because that describes me. You couldn't tell me I was an alcoholic, yet I was absolutely astonished at my inability to stop. But God, I would never tell you that. Never tell you. I'd never let on. We who are familiar with the symptoms see large numbers of potential alcoholics among young people everywhere, but try and get them to see it. Tara, what do you think?
Yeah, I just love what you taught. I mean, yeah, I was astonished at my inability to stop. Now I don't really particularly agree with the paragraph when it includes women. I think if you're an alcoholic, I don't give a shit if you're gay, straight, male, female, no matter. You're an alcoholic, right? I mean, I met a lot of people in AA that don't understand what an alcoholic is.
Mm, yeah.
Like hey, my name's Terry. I'm an alcoholic. That's how they know they're an alcoholic. I'm like, oh, they said, "Oh, I've been to jail." I'm like, that don't make you an alcoholic. I know people that have been to jail and done some horrible stuff, and they're not alcoholic. Oh, well, I lost my marriage due to drinking. Well, I know people that lost their marriage because of drinking, and they're not an alcoholic. Oh, I got a DUI. I know people who have DUIs. I have two friends who have DUIs, and they're not one of us. All right. What makes me an alcoholic is when I drink, I lose control. I just lose control. I get thirstier. I want more. A craving, something beyond my mental control. It can't stay stopped. We talked about it. It's like having sex with a kangaroo, and the sex don't stop until the kangaroo's done. Like, I was talking to my Aussie friends about that. But then what makes me an alcoholic as well is when I'm sober, I can't stay sober. That's what makes me an alcoholic. And if you're new here and you don't think you can help anyone, yeah, you can. We just taught you something that probably half of AA don't even know about. They don't know why they're an alcoholic. Go talk about that stuff. If you give this person, an individual, about a full knowledge of their condition based on your experience, because they'll just start mirroring you, because it's a miracle for identification, you could call it. They'll be like, oh my God, they'll be awakened in that moment. You are have the opportunity to help someone, go help someone. And there's someone right now that can't stop and they don't know why. So, all right, let's go to the next page, 34. As we look back, love that. We live life forward, we reflect on it and understand it backwards. We feel we have gone on drinking many years beyond the point where we could have uh, quit on our own will, power, choice, and control. If anyone questions whether he has entered this dangerous area, here's our another test. This is what I call the obsession test. Is let him try leaving liquor alone for a year. A year. If he is a real alcoholic, so he has, reached his potential, right, on his spectrum. There's very what is it? Far advanced. There's that spectrum that I'm talking about. Like, how far did you go, right? There's a scant chance of success, right? And yet again, if you don't, if you feel like you have the allergy, but you're not identifying with the obsession, try this test. I don't want you to. I don't recommend it. But if you have questions, a little reservation, or your top secret in your mind, your little lurking notion in the back of your mind, try practicing that test. See if it works, right? In the early days of our drinking, we occasionally remained sober for a year or more. I've done that, becoming serious drinkers later again. Though you may be able to stop for a considerable period, you may yet be a potential alcoholic. Maybe your chemistry hasn't changed. I don't know. People are different. We just talked about that. I was in rehab at 14 years old. Uh, I was in AA in 99 where you could smoke in meetings. And that was a fun time, right? But it took me until 2019 to be like, I lost control, right? I reached my potential, but I didn't really realize it until I reflect back on it, right? So where was it? We think few to whom this book will appear can state anything dry like a year. This book will only appeal to someone who has lost power, choice, and control. I don't know about you, Howard. Like, I really did not want to read this book. I just didn't. I remember watching a video. Oh, this is crazy. When I was in Brooklyn, they were recommending me to go to this big book or 12-step rehab in Minnesota, and they showed me a video, and there's all these people in a little circle reading this big blue book, and I'm like, yuck, ew, that's disgusting. I don't want to do that, right? But and then when I opened it, I was like, oh, I read page 21. I read page 60, where each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. And then I started reading the doctor's opinion, right? When I'm sober, I'm restless, irritable, and discontent unless I get ease and comfort. That sense of ease and comfort by taking a drink. It was just like, oh my God, I'm looking at myself. I mean, when I read Dr. Bob's story, I was like, that dude is me. Like, that is me to the T, right? Even Bill's story, and I needed some help with that because I was trying to, I guess you kind of have to pick apart his story in order to relate. Whereas Dr. Bob like kind of punching you in the face. Thank God I had good sponsorship. He told me an exercise. Did you think like Bill, feel like Bill, and drink like Bill? So I was looking at the differences, but I wasn't looking at the similarities, but that helped me with the similarities. But this book hit me and it appealed to me. It sold me. I was just thinking about this earlier, Howard. I was like, I have friends that I went to rehab with in Minnesota. I mean, they would ask us crazy questions like, "Oh, look to your partner to the right of you or to the left of you. They most likely will drink or they will die." Like some crazy shit. Only 10% will stay sober if you do this and do that. And I've spoken. There's only two people out of maybe 100 plus people that are still sober today, and about five of them I know are off and in, but they don't. They're not sold on the book. I was sold. Like I'm someone who was sold on like it says in the doctor's opinion, I was sold on the ideas contained in this book because I literally saw myself and it was scary to me. And then it appealed to me because I couldn't stay sober longer than an hour after saying I was done for good and forever. I mean, anyone do that? Anyone try leaving liquor or drugs alone just for that one day? I mean, try a year. Someone when I hear someone has a year sober, I'm like, Jesus, they're like Jesus Christ walking on water. Like, like I couldn't stay sober longer than an hour, Howard. And I said I was done forever. I failed this test over and over and over again at the very end. And I don't even want to try that test because I know it's real. All right, back to you, pal.
Yeah, there's so much in this paragraph. It begins with saying, as we look back, we feel we've gone on drinking many years before the point where we could quit on our own. I believe there are three stages of our progression of drinking. The first stage is drinking for fun. We like the way it makes us feel. Life is a party. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, baby. But things change. Sex, drugs, rock and roll eventually becomes AIDS, crack, and Britney Spears. So things, oops, I shouldn't say Britney Spears, and Milli Vanilli. Things change. So the second stage is using to function. So I think he's referring to one of those first stages, and I really believe it's the first one. We could stop when it was fun. But why would we do a stupid thing like that? Right? Why would we do that? It doesn't make any sense because you say, so I'm gonna have a problem later. What do you know? What do you know? So we would have stopped at that point, but we just couldn't see what was heading our way. And I love the fact that the paragraph ends with the statement of, to whom this book will appeal. We feel to whom this book will appeal. Who does this book appeal to? Is it the hard drinker? Is it the moderate drinker? No. It says it early on that this is for the hopeless variety, the alcoholic of the hopeless variety, the man who is drowning. With the desperation of drowning men, we come to Alcoholics Anonymous. That is not a hard drinker. That is not a moderate drinker. Drowning men don't ask questions. They're too busy gasping for air. That's who this book is directed at. And it finishes up with an interesting statement. It says something about making a resolution. You know the difference between a resolution and a decision? A resolution is an empty promise. A decision is followed by action. So when he says many a resolution but never a decision, that's what we're talking about. We make a lot of resolutions, empty promises. Decisions, that's a little bit hard for us because it requires action, and we're not that good at that. We're much better at this lip service. Yeah. You want me to go into the next paragraph? Okay. For those who are unable to drink moderately, the question is how to stop altogether. There it is. There's the question. You've just spent 33 pages pointing out to me that I have no power, no choice, no control. And now you tell me I have to stop. All right, I'm game. We are assuming, of course, that the reader wants to stop, and you may want to put a question mark after that. Do you really want to stop? Whether such a person can quit on a non-spiritual basis, please underline non-spiritual basis. It is the beginning of Bill introducing the spiritual solution. Up until now, he's used terms like beyond human aid. beyond human aid and non-spiritual basis mean the same thing. We are beyond human aid and we need a spiritual basis. So from this point on, his introduction, when he says we're beyond human aid, he's talking about we need a solution that is non-human in nature. And I'll let you in on something. Fellowship is human aid. Okay. Depends on the extent to which he's already lost the power to choose, as Terry said, choice, power, control, whether he will drink or not. Many of us felt that we had plenty of characters. We have plenty of characters in AA. But I think what he's talking about is we have moral codes. Most of us have a sense of right and wrong. We do. It's that gut feeling. It's that innate sense of God in our gut that tells us, I don't think that's a good idea for doing it, to do what you're thinking of doing. Deep down in every one of us is that feeling. And that's what we're talking about. We have this sense of character. There was a tremendous urge to cease forever, yet we found it impossible. Those are two strong, very strong words. To cease forever and to do it, found it impossible. And I'm going to suggest you highlight the rest of this paragraph because this is the best definition of alcoholism that you may come across. Kathy pointed this out to me. The baffling feature of alcoholism is the utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. Does that not sum it up? I've never seen it any better than that. The baffling feature of alcoholism is this utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. That is alcoholism defined. That's as good as you're going to find it. Terry, go ahead.
Thanks, buddy. It was another test that was taught to me, which is, can I quit on a non-spiritual basis? And I looked at all the ways that I've tried to quit or moderate on a non-spiritual basis, like working out, reading books, you know, being in a relationship, going to 1,000 meetings. That's kind of spiritual, yeah. But can I quit on a non-spiritual basis? No. But that word extent really dropped out to me, and I listened to Mark Houston talk about that paragraph. When he asked Don Pritz, he was like, "Hey, you never heard Don Pritz or Mark Houston? Just go on YouTube and throw a dart at one of their talks." Mark Houston asked Don, he's like, "Well, why are people in AA and they're real alcoholics and they can make half of amends and be happy and content? Why can't I be the one of them? Why do some people in AA could go through the steps 1 through 9 once and practice 10, 11, and 12 for the rest of their life and they're happy and content? Why do I have to continuously go through the steps? You know, why do people could just don't drink and go to meetings and actually stay sober? There's real alcoholics. I bet a bunch who have 20 plus years sober and they wanted to kill themselves at that moment. That's why they fell in love with the big book because they saw themselves in it. But there's some people that can stay sober or for don't drink and go to meetings for a long time and be a real alcoholic. But why not him? It was because of that paragraph. How far did you go? To the extent to which he's lost the power, choice, and control to choose power, choice, and control whether he will drink or not. How far advanced did you become? You don't need to go as far as I have gone. But you notice that when people do relapse, they put the life that AA gave them get in the way of their AA way of life. They'll use non-spiritual ways in order to stay sober, and then they'll find themselves drunk or high, right? I agree with you. That baffling feature, it's like you fell in love, and you got your heart broken.
Yeah.
I don't- like, I mean, who's been in love before? Who's had a high school crush? I remember mine. Her name was Winter. I don't know why. I was 12 years old and stuff, and she broke my heart. I had this utter inability to leave her alone.
Leave it alone.
To leave it alone. I had this utter inability to leave it alone. She was on my mind 24/7. Yeah, I outgrew
Yeah.
it.
What is the it? Okay, go ahead.
But you guys get my drift. I mean, we built this love affair with alcohol and drugs. to the point that we will literally die for it. I mean, it says in the doctor's opinion, we will commit the ultimate sacrifice rather than continue to fight. Meaning, I will kill myself straight up. Like because of this. This is how powerful this is. This is telling me that I will always pursue it no matter what. Like this is me. This is my no matter what club right here. This is me. I'm gonna drink and get high no matter what. I mean, I'm gonna have an insane thought. Doesn't matter now, doesn't matter in 20 years or 40 years. It says at certain times means I don't know when it's gonna happen, but it's going to happen where I will have a thought about getting high or getting drunk. It's just going to happen. If I accept that and I surrender to that fact that I am truly powerless in a mental sober state, that I need power in my life, I have a chance to stay sober forever. Because that means I need to go and build this relationship with power to give me a defense long term, a day at a time, a day at a time. Yeah, any last comments? I think we're out of time right now.
Yeah. Well, just one last thing, what you just talked about basically summarizes that we want to stop, but cannot. And I was at a meeting recently where we read this, and the person pointed out, who was a bit of a biblical authority, and I am far from that. I'm in the other team entirely. I'm in a different book. But the point is, he quoted Paul in Romans 6:7, which says, "We have become slaves. We are without choice." And that's what powerlessness is. We are slaves. We have no choice. So, Terry, thank you for asking me to be here this evening. You all come visit on Sunday night at the Big Book Study at 5 o'clock Eastern. I put in the chat a link for the Common Sense of Drinking, the entire book. There's a link, a PDF for it. Click on it, and you don't have to go out and buy the book.
Yes. Okay. All right, let me stop the recording and then we'll